Welcome to Midnight Stories. Tonight, we delve into a chilling true crime tale that will leave you looking over your shoulder. What if you felt something or someone was always following you? In this episode, we unravel the terrifying story of a person pursued by an unseen force, leading to a gripping and unexpected conclusion. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to join us on this spine-tingling journey. Stay curious, stay cautious. I visited Romania and now it follows me. I'm a scientist, but I've always had an interest in what science deems is not real. I live near the Appalachian Mountains and I hike there often. I probably know all of the legends from that area, so when work calls me to different regions, I always spend time learning about their local legends too. I don't know if I really believed any of these stories, just because history is so often misinterpreted. About a month ago I was called to Romania. It was really out of the way and I don't usually go to Europe for work, but Romania is a beautiful country and I would never turn down this opportunity. As I was packing, I debated bringing my journal where I keep track of the legends I learn about. I was torn. While Romania is known for vampires and Transylvania and such, I also find vampires to be one of the most silly legends, which happens to be one of the most popular. But I ended up bringing it, though I already have information about vampires. Ion Romaru and Jur Grando are some of the most spoken about. I thought that maybe the locals might have stories I can write down. I threw the little black book on top of my suitcase and continued to get ready for my flight in the morning. The plane ride was going to be long and I was sure to land in cloudy weather, but I was still excited to arrive. An emergency landing was put in place, something about a late plane taking up space. I stepped off my plane onto the tarmac. Sure enough, I was surrounded by thick fog as I waited for my shuttle to arrive. I noticed that there were only a handful of travelers that were on my plane. Most of them appeared to be locals, speaking Romanian to each other during the ride. "You look American. Are you?" I heard an unfamiliar voice ask me. I turned to face the voice. "Yes, I am," I replied shallowly. The plane ride had put me in a bad mood. The young man who was speaking with me looked disappointed. "Look, I'm gonna be here for a while and I don't have a ton of people to talk with, so here's my card. Call me, if you want," he said as he passed me a small white business card. I scanned it quickly before sticking it in my pocket. I nodded at the man and smiled. I appreciated his gesture. I was simply too upset to say anything. I arrived at my hotel almost 3 hours later. It was a ways away from the airport in Bucharest. I was staying in Brașov, so I had to take a cab. I sat on my bed and turned on the television. The channels were in Romanian, but I figured that it would make good background noise while I figured out the rest of my schedule. I would attend my meeting at 9, then be finished at 12:30. I would have the rest of the day to speak with locals. The next day I would get breakfast, then make my way over to the research center and hopefully have some more time to explore the history of the city. I decided to make my plans for Bucharest once I was there. That morning I got ready quickly and made my way to my meeting. Walking through the cobbled streets, I felt as though eyes were on me. When I glanced around the street, I saw it was empty, but my feelings still lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up and I got goosebumps. I figured the odd suspicion would subside when I got into my meeting, which it did. My meeting was long and tedious. It made me tired. I would have gone home and slept if I wasn't so excited to hear the local legends. I left my meeting and headed to a local cafe. Then I again felt as though someone was watching me. I squinted out the window, into the fog, and saw 2 small lights which appeared to be glaring directly at me. I was immediately taken aback. The 2 lights could have been car beams, but the roads were strangely empty. I didn't finish my coffee. I left the cup there and left. I wanted to get back to my hotel room as quickly as I could. When I arrived back to my room, I expected a sense of relief, but I did not receive it. Instead, my eerie feeling that someone was watching me lingered. I tried to relax. I took a shower and poured myself a glass of bourbon. I read a bit, but nothing helped me. It was almost 2 p.m. when I left my room again, this time more cautious, checking that I locked my door multiple times before I left. I was paranoid. I found myself constantly looking around to find the source of my unease. Still, I couldn't locate it. I walked down the street leading to the town square, my journal in hand and shaking off my nervous feeling. I stepped into an old library and found an older woman who, luckily, spoke English. "Would you come get lunch with me and help me translate a book?" I asked her. The book was old, it was about local legends and the town's history. She agreed and I helped her walk to a shop nearby. She smiled the entire time at me. She told me she was happy to help me, that she loved foreigners but she doesn't see them often. "What is the book?" she asked me. When I told her it was about the legends, her face dropped. I could tell she was nervous, but still she helped me. She would pause between her summarizes to interrupt the book, informing me this book was vague or that it was wrong. She took the time to tell me all the stories she's heard and what the locals believe. I carefully took notes as she spoke. I had paid for our meal and helped the woman to her apartment before finding myself sitting in the lobby deciding what to do next. As I snapped out of my fantasy world of monsters and legends, I began feeling unease again. I felt eyes watching me again. I glanced around and was met with the same eerie absence of presence. This town looked almost abandoned, and the longer I stayed there the faster I wanted to leave. I left the building and quickly found the nearest ticket booth. I bought an overnight ticket to Bucharest. I disregarded my plans and rushed back to my hotel room, packing up all my belongings before I caught a taxi to the train station. I suddenly felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I peered out the window and saw the two lights staring at me again, though this time I was aware these were not lights, they were eyes. It was part of the legend the woman had told me. The eyes belonged to a creature called a strigoi. The locals believed the strigoi had become territorial. I don't know why I didn't make this connection before. I was put into a state of shock. The creature had been stalking me, that's why I felt as if I was being watched. I waited impatiently at the train station, situated between the largest crowd of people there, which must have been no more than 5 or 6 people. I felt safer with them. The train ride wasn't long, in fact it felt short. Maybe it was the relief I got from leaving Brashov and those eyes behind. I, now, felt that I may have been dramatic. There was no way a strigoi was stalking me like prey. I found the nearest hotel in Bucharest. I didn't unpack, I just laid down and tried to sleep. In the morning I unpacked and went over to the Bucharest library, looking up as much about the strigoi as I could. Suddenly I heard a gasp. My head darted towards the sound. I was met with the image of a frightened woman looking out the window at a tall, ghastly figure in the distance. It followed me here. I was shocked. It looked vaguely like the photos in the book from yesterday. The wind blew the glass door to the library open. The sound caught everyone's attention, and when I looked back at the monster outside, it had vanished. I turned to the only thing I could turn to. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the card of the man I met on the plane. He picked up on the second ring. "Hello?" He spoke first. "Hi, I'm the guy from the plane." I was at a loss for words. "I think I'm being stalked by a Romanian monster and I don't know who else to call," I continued. The man on the other line was silent. I could hear him breathing, trying to decide what to say. "You're not serious. You can't be serious," he said. I couldn't tell if he was angry or just in disbelief. If I were him, I would have just hung up. "Please, come quickly to the library," I asked him, though my words sounded like pleads. He hung up on me. I didn't know what I was going to do. I stayed in the library, reading, hoping maybe there was some kind of warding. I had been searching frantically when I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. Goosebumps scattered across my skin and my body shivered. I turned slowly and fearfully. To my surprise, I was met with the worried face of the man from the plane. "Is it happening to you too?" he asked me. He nervously glanced around. He was paranoid too. "The strigoi? Is it following you?" I asked him curiously. He nodded. Since I landed, he told me. His voice was shaking while he spoke. I urged him to leave the library with me, to go back to my room so we could speak privately. He followed me. The streets of Bucharest weren't as filled as I had expected, yet still they were much more lively than Brashov. Once we entered my hotel room, a wave of relief washed over both me and the man. I heard him let out a sigh as I shut and locked the door. "Daniel, by the way," he said suddenly. "Sam, nice to meet you," I said as I shook his hand. I sat down at the small coffee table in the corner of the room. Daniel didn't. He instead went to look out the window. "It's a shame, this city is so beautiful and yet ruined by the presence of that beast." He pitted himself as he spoke. "My life will never be the same, assuming I live long enough to get out of this abysmal city." Daniel continued. Although Daniel was perhaps my only chance at avoiding this creature and the only person who understood, he was aggravating to speak to. "Daniel, you're going to live. I'm not going to allow the Strigoi to come near either of us, let alone kill us," I said, trying to put a stop on his rampage of despair. Daniel had just started to formulate his response when he heard a knock at the door. "I'll get it." Daniel walked across the room, opening the door. I paid this no mind until I heard a bizarre gurgling sound. I leaned back in my chair to see Daniel's limp body wedged between the doorway, his blood spilling into the hotel hallway and his head nowhere in sight. I was frozen. I didn't gasp or yell, I rendered myself almost catatonic. I couldn't move while I watched a pale figure step into the doorway, over Daniel's lifeless, bloody, and mutilated body. I couldn't move as the creature stepped towards me, revealing Daniel's severed head. I couldn't move as I watched the creature take a bite of Daniel's neck, or when he sucked the blood out of Daniel's veins. I couldn't move. The creature stood in my room, staring at me, his pale eyes fixated on mine. His teeth dripped with blood as he bared his fangs at me. I couldn't yell for help. The creature's bared fangs turned into a sadistic smile before he slowly turned away from me. He walked to my door and left, dragging Daniel with him. This was almost 3 months ago. I'm back in Vegas now, writing this from my apartment. I see the creature every day, all he does is smile at me. I've tried solutions. Garlic doesn't work because it's not a vampire, a cross won't repel it, and neither will salt. A few weeks ago I decided the only way I was going to be in control of the rest of my life was to end it. But whatever I do, I can't. The creature won't let me. Whenever I try, he appears, smiling at me, taunting me. He controls my life. My life isn't even really my life anymore. Not when the only thing I feel is fear. I live my life in constant fear that Daniel's fate will soon become mine.